Okay, and Admiral Cooper was in the region, flying over the region in a helicopter the other night to see all of this firsthand. And as we await the president, we bring in retired Vice Admiral Kevin Donegan as commander of the Fifth Fleet. He was responsible for the U.S. contingency plans for Iran as CENTCOM Director of Operations. He's also a distinguished fellow at the military fellow at the Middle East Institute. And retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery served more than 30 years in the Navy as a nuclear-trained surface warfare officer. He's senior director at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's great to have both of you here, admirals. I guess I want to start by asking you about this reporting from Axios, and I'll start with you, Kevin, Admiral Kevin Donegan. They reported that on Thursday, when Admiral Cooper spoke with President Trump and kind of laid out some of the latest military options, that he was presented with a plan that would send naval vessels through the Strait of Hormuz to open it by force, to essentially put enough ships there to dominate the strait and to claim it, essentially. And the Axios reporting is that the president opted, at least initially, for this other version, which would be sort of protecting from a distance and bringing aid to any ships that want to get through that strait. What's your reaction to that reporting, Admiral Donegan?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mark. It's hard to say what went on in that meeting because, you know, we weren't there. But when you look at it, the lens that I'm looking at it through, we see that Iran's playing the main card that they have to play, right? That they control the straits and they're forcing traffic to the north. This new plan that's been initiated by CENTCOM is shifting the normal, what was normal at least during this conflict, and saying, hey, everyone, we have this operation. It's called Protect Freedom. And the idea is you can now don't have to go north of in the straits, north of the traffic route separation scheme. You can come south of it, and we're going to protect you in what they called a enhanced security area. In other words, they're going to create a sanctuary so that ships can come and go through the straits in a different way than going close to Iranian waters. It also, as you can imagine, gives the Navy some time and space to ID any threats to any of those ships that would be transiting so they can take care of them, as you just saw happen today. So basically, it's a shift in the normal. And then the other thing you can see being postured at the same time, more broadly, is the U.S. trying to posture other nations to take this on with the United Nations Security Council resolution that may be in works through the other Gulf nations, condemning Iran for this closure of the straits. So that seems to be the strategy that the president and Brad Cooper, as he's articulating, is carrying out. And we saw it happen today with the sinking of 6 ships and the protection of this first wave of ships through the straits.
Yeah, it seems to be working in that regard, as you say. Admiral Montgomery, I want to read this to you. This is a post from Ibrahim Azizi, the chairman of Iran's Parliament's National Security Committee, and he threatened retaliation for this move. He says any American interference in the new maritime regime of the Strait of Hormuz will be considered a violation of the ceasefire. The Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf would not be managed by Trump's delusional posts, he goes on to say there. First of all, the phrase that he used there, the new maritime regime of the Strait of Hormuz, this is obviously what Iran hopes is a big card for them. Is this operation going to be enough to take that claim away from them, Admiral?
Well, yeah, first, as you allude, new maritime regime is in fact not a term in international law. The actual term is transit passage through international waterways, which is what we're restoring. We're restoring normal international law to the Straits of Hormuz, which Iran disrupted starting about 60 days ago. So the restoration of this new international law into the straits, is what we're doing, and that's why it takes some risk. Absolutely, I think they're gonna try missiles, drones, mines, and small boat attacks on the merchant ships, and if the U.S. Navy ships are in their proximity, the Navy ships. So it is incumbent on the president to show the discipline, persistence, and patience to both maintain the blockade of Iran and ensure the transit passage through international waterways of the 300 ships or so that would like to get out of the Arabian Gulf.
Yeah, one of the things that Iran had put out there was that there were mines in the area that we are now protecting sort of at a distance right now, not as a full escort military operation. And now we're guiding ships through that area, which indicates that we're not concerned about mines or that we've cleared them or we know where they are. I just want to bring in, if I could ask you gentlemen to stand by. We have a live report from the region that we want to check in with, and then we'll come back to you with correspondent Lucas Tomlinson joining us now from Dubai. The UAE slamming, quote, unprovoked terror attacks from Iran today using missiles and drones headed into the UAE. Lucas, welcome. What's the latest from where you are?
Martha, we've heard explosions in the distance throughout the evening. We've received at least four push alerts to our mobile phones warning us of incoming missiles. And we just heard from the commander of U.S. Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper, who says U.S. warships and commercial ships came under missile attack earlier while transiting the Strait of Hormuz. And Apache gunships and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters were dispatched to destroy 6 Iranian small boats. You read the beginning of that statement from the UAE Foreign Ministry. I'll continue. It says, quote, the United Arab Emirates has condemned in the strongest terms renewed terrorist, unprovoked Iranian attacks targeting civilian sites and facilities in the country using missiles and drones, which resulted in the injury of 3 Indian nationals. And the UAE Defense Ministry just put out a statement saying Emirati air defenses today engaged 12 ballistic missiles, 3 cruise missiles, and 4 drones after U.S. warships helped get those 2 U.S.-flagged cargo ships out of the Persian Gulf and through the Strait of Hormuz. This morning, those same warships and commercial vessels came under attack, and Iran also launched an attack on the Fujairah, one of the Emirates along the Gulf of Oman and home to major oil terminals, including that pipeline that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. Perhaps Iran is angry about UAE leaving OPEC on Friday. So some think this month-long ceasefire has ended, and it's quite clear today that Iran wants to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. Martha?
Thank you, Lucas. Back with our panel now, retired Vice Admiral Kevin Donegan, as we mentioned, and Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery. Admiral Donegan, your reaction to those attacks on the UAE?
Yeah, so what's happened, Martha, is that the Iranians didn't like that CENTCOM and the president have reestablished flow through the Straits of Hormuz, not in accordance with what they wanted. And their reaction was to attack Fujairah, first to try to attack the ships, and then attack Fujairah, and then some other targets inside the Emirates. Notice they didn't directly attack the U.S., so to speak, in this, other than they did attack in the direction of where our ships were. So this is not an unexpected response, but clearly a breaking of the ceasefire from the Iranian side, when Brad Cooper made very clear, it wasn't read in his statement, but it was in one he released, that this operation, Project Freedom, was a defensive operation to restore flow of traffic, and that 87 nations have the right to use that strait, and Iran doesn't have the right to control it.
Yeah, it's clear, Admiral Montgomery, that they continue to use this phrase, Iran, of the new maritime regime of the Strait of Hormuz, which does not comport with any international law of the freedom of the waterways in this region. When you look at this back and forth, this kinetic back and forth, are we still in a ceasefire, in your opinion, Admiral Montgomery?
Well, we'll have to see what the U.S. response is. If we keep some kind of, destroying the 6 ships, you could say was the 6 small boats, that's an immediate defensive response. It would not be inappropriate for the United States or United Arab Emirates to conduct a proportionate strike from whence those weapons came at the U.S. ships and at the Fujairah. There's a potential the president will hold off on that, see what happens when the next escort happens. As the big power, we have the luxury of being patient, of thinking our way through this, deciding when you escalate. So there's some likelihood that we won't do anything. We're not compelled to. The good news is they didn't hit any of these ships. Obviously, there's some wounded people in United Arab Emirates. But, the good news about being the big power is you get to control the escalation ladder. And I think it'd be smart for the president now to hold off.
He obviously has the options that were laid out at his request by Admiral Cooper, CENTCOM Commander Cooper, and we're going to hear from the president shortly about small business. No doubt we're probably going to see some questions on all of this as well as he takes this, sort of tempered early route with other options at his disposal. Admirals, welcome. Good to have you here, I should say. Thank you very much to you both. Thank you, sir.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.